All right, good afternoon, everyone. Great to see everybody. Thank you for coming out for the event. You know, when you think of space diplomacy, and particularly what the U.S. government is focused on for priorities, you know, you hear a lot of the usual suspects, Europe, Japan, Canada. You don't often hear Africa as a priority, as a key area or region of the world where the U.S. is engaged in space diplomacy. But that is changing, and that is the topic we're going to talk about today on this panel. We're going to go into a little bit about why it has changed, what's driving that, what's been going on, because there's actually, I think, a lot of things that haven't got as much public attention maybe as they should have that has been happening, and what to look forward in the future. And I'm joined by two of the people that are making it happen, leaders from the Department of State and from NTIA, who are doing a lot of these activities. So, Valda, I'm going to start with you. And, you know, what has changed in the last few years to where Africa now is something the U.S. government is focused on as a region to engage with?
So, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Brian. Thanks for Meridian for once again pulling together this amazing opportunity to speak. You're right, a lot has changed. And I think the last couple of years have really seen a reset in our relationship with our partners in Africa. And I think that is largely driven by commercial diplomacy and the recognition that there's an opportunity for really mutually beneficial partnerships. We have seen a huge growth in the African market, and I want to get these numbers right. African space market currently valued at over 24 billion, expected to reach 39 billion by 2030. That in and of itself is reason enough, I think, to increase our engagement and look for opportunities. By 2050, Africa will have a quarter of the globe's population. Again, now is the time to start robust engagement across the board. We're focused on space here today. I would say that our approach to partnership with our African partners is based on sort of a pragmatic premise. It needs to be mutually beneficial. We recognize the dynamism of the African market, the potential that is there, and really looking for opportunities to harness this for commercial diplomacy to benefit both our country, our companies, our commercial space sector, but that also benefits our African partners. We have really strong and capable partners in Africa already. There is a lot being done with Earth observation, the data that comes from that. So it's just a market that is ripe for further engagement and partnership. I will note, and Administrator Isaacman spoke about it in his introductory remarks, I was fortunate enough to be at the NASA rollout of the exploration plan, and I'm sure everybody has read about it in the news, other reporting. I can't imagine a better time for us now to be talking to our African partners. We had the representatives from Senegal, Angola, and Rwanda who flew in for the event yesterday. We have 61 Artemis Accord signatories right now from the original 8. It is very clear from what the administrator said that there are opportunities for our Artemis partners, whether those are advanced spacefaring nations, whether those are emerging space nations. There is a real opportunity now to engage in a way that is meaningful. People always ask, you know, the Accords are a great thing, and there's been a lot of value that has come from that, but this is a very tangible, you know, I think the signal is you're coming to the moon with us if you want to. So very exciting. And then finally, I would say that I think Africa has been a real leader, some of our African partners, on talking about things like, or partnering with us on discussions about what does space sustainability look like, what does space governance look like, et cetera. So for all of these reasons, I think there is a recognition that now is the time, and we really are expending a tremendous amount of of energy and effort on this.
Yeah, I know from my own experience working in the UN COPUOS, there's a broader set of countries, including Africa, that have been engaged in those discussions, but have not always been participants in space, but they engage in discussions. And now there's an opportunity to both, right? To both be engaged in those governance discussions and be involved in the actual activities.
Absolutely, and I would say that is very true. And I think that the voices that we hear, we have 4 African signatories, the 3 I mentioned, plus Nigeria. Those countries, when we have an opportunity in the accords to have some of these conversations, that discussion then feeds into places like COPUOS.
So, Jaisha, turning to you, NTIA is part of the Department of Commerce. You've got a different set of activities that are going on related to commercial space opportunities, regulatory cooperation. Can you talk about what you are doing and the department is doing in regard to Africa engagement?
Absolutely. There are many different parts of the Commerce Department engaged in this arena. First of all, we have NTIA, the principal advisor to the president on telecommunications and information policy issues. And we are hyper engaged on the spectrum front, managing spectrum for the US government. But spectrum is a global resource. And so as a result, we are constantly engaging both internationally and around the world in venues like the International Telecommunication Union, or ITU, and by extension, the African Telecommunications Union. We also have the Office of Space Commerce, or OSC, and they're actively working to foster the conditions for economic growth and technological development and leading on a wide range of issues for the Commerce Department, and you'll be hearing more on that front from Taylor Jordan later today. And then both NTIA and OSC work very closely with our sister agency, the International Trade Administration, who is also doing its part to promote space and space connectivity worldwide. Now, to get to your question on where specifically in Africa are some of our priorities at a broad level, we're really working to promote policy and regulatory environments in Africa that encourage that healthy competition and an equal footing for US vendors. We're working to lay the groundwork, we're working to matchmake, and then helping our companies compete overseas. On space issues, we're helping the US satellite industry, both on issues related to spectrum, but also market access, and then helping them reach their targets in markets around the world, but especially right now in Africa. That is, as Valda mentioned, a key priority. And then another priority is fostering the conditions for trade. There's also space flight safety considerations. I'll get to that a little more later. And then finally, we are getting on planes and going out and engaging around the world. We're going to be traveling with our State Department colleagues to the new Space Africa conference coming up in Gabon next month, and we're going to be racking up the frequent flyer miles. Thank you.
Actual diplomacy, that's great, traveling, see the world. So, Valda, you mentioned a little bit about kind of what the priorities are. What has been going on over the last, let's say, year that you'd really want to highlight that people may not have noticed or may not have seen in terms of engagements?
Okay, so one of the things I want to do, I want to start out by giving a shout out to, I don't know if he's in the audience, Sean Carver from the Africa Bureau at the State Department. All right, okay. And here's why. So as I said in my first answer, right, we've been focusing on what we can do to engage more with our African partners. That has obviously involved significant engagement with our interagency partners, with our commercial partners, but it also has required that we within the State Department are closely synced up and aligned with our regional bureaus. And Sean has been a real champion in that and helped move the ball forward significantly. And one of the things that he and Eric Nam in the Space Affairs Office have done, which I think has been very well received, is we've started these US-Africa technical and regulatory training series. And that's meant to bring together on sort of a periodic basis experts from within the USG to speak to our Africa partners on a whole host of issues that they may be interested in, whether it's spectrum management, licensing, cybersecurity, et cetera. So I think that's been an excellent and very sort of concrete, pragmatic first step. The other important, I think, effort or focus that we've undertaken is we've really encouraged our African partners to think about creating sort of their own indigenous capacity to build that up. We are always happy to serve as, provide technical advice, guidance, feedback. We'd love to do that, but we really have sort of stressed that it's important that it's an indigenous capability that they develop and are able to sustain. That's what we would like to support. That's what we'd love to see happen. There are other countries who will roll in and offer a lot of new buildings and shiny, roll in and offer a whole host of inducements or incentives. I would argue that a lot of those are actually not as, nothing is free. It's
Not as free as they seem.
Nothing is free. It's not as free as it seems. I think long-term, it does not help build that sustainability, that indigenous capacity. So that's another, we want to be the partner of choice. We want to be the partner that is transparent, that helps develop and sustain the capacity of our African partners. We, of course, as Jaisha said, will be going to New Space Africa again this year. This is our third year attending. I think the only one we have missed was the first year, the inaugural year. Every year we go, the U.S. delegation, I think, is more robust. We have more meaningful engagements, more meetings. I certainly don't see that changing anytime in the near future, so I look at that as a really positive advancement. And then we have at the State Department something we call PODs, Partnership Opportunity Delegations. We have international visitor leadership programs, IVLPs. All of these offer an opportunity for us either to bring our commercial sector to a country and make connections, facilitate introductions, or bring participants from other countries here to the U.S. to meet with a broad swath of interagency partners. So that's all. Let me see what else I'm forgetting. I think those are the big things. And of course, we are always trying to expand our Artemis Accord signatories. I don't think that we have 4 African nations who are signatory members. They are also they are the best voice, the best proponents, the best advocates and cheerleaders for the Accords. They are doing a tremendous job at that. So looking forward to a continued growth in that Accords family as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. And Jaisha, similar question to you from NTIA, from Commerce. As you're working with U.S. industry and Africa partners on more commercial space ties, are there particular sectors where you see the most growth potential or potential for engagement?
Yeah, first is really the satellite connectivity piece. Africa has a very young and growing population, and so their demand for satellite connectivity is expanding so rapidly. And so at NTIA, where our work on spectrum coordination is really central to enable these operations and ensure the market access for U.S. companies to meet that need. We're also engaging on that front by sharing best practices on digital infrastructure policies and regulations, because really that strong common regulatory foundation is really critical to enable U.S. and African companies to thrive. And in the ITU specifically, we're pursuing capacity building and sharing best practices on low Earth orbit satellites, on direct-to-device satellite and mobile services integration, and future space-based communications. I'm also pleased to announce that NTIA is partnering with the U.S. Telecommunications Training Institute, or USTTI, to organize a training coming up this May in Ghana. And we're going to be focused on satellite connectivity for African policy and regulatory decision makers to really promote regulatory environments that promote satellite connectivity, including for low Earth orbit satellite systems. And so these trainings are really going to highlight the incredible benefits of satellite innovation. And so we hope that this will also strengthen our diplomacy within Africa, but also beyond. And we also hope it will help our participants prepare for the very important upcoming World Radio Communications Conference in 2027, which will have a huge focus on space and satellite issues. Another key sector, as Africa is really expanding their space capabilities and launch capabilities, they're going to need space traffic coordination. And so the Office of Space Commerce is now piloting the Traffic Coordination System for Space, or TRACS, which will provide spaceflight safety services to spacecraft operators around the world. And this system is providing services to 17 pilot users, and OSC has even opened a waitlist, which is available on the website, so that other interested satellite owners and operators and countries can get in the queue to join TRACS. And so in addition, TRACS is also planning to implement national government accounts in the near future, which will also allow governments to sign up for a read-only account that allows them to view the safety situation of all spacecraft affiliated with their country, whether government or private, and really helping the government to get key insights into the spaceflight safety situation. And they've adopted a data policy that emphasizes openness and transparency and enables this international coordination. And the track system will eventually make spacecraft catalog information openly available on its website, which will be available to operators, researchers, and entrepreneurs really in any country, including Africa, so that they can better understand their spaceflight safety situation.
Yeah, and I think the timing of that TRACS is really important. There's now within UN Community Peace Outer Space, there's now a new expert group on space situational awareness, where you've now got 105 countries talking about the importance of SSA. How do we do better coordination? So I think that the timing of that is pretty darn good.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up here, we've got a couple minutes left. Valda, what do you see as coming up next? What are the future activities or future issues you see related to the next steps in U.S.-Africa engagement?
So we'll continue our technical exchange. Oh, thank you. We'll continue our technical dialogues that we do with our colleagues in the AF Bureau. We will continue, along with our colleagues at NASA, promoting, along with our current African signatories, we'll continue to promote the Accords. We will be at New Space Africa. We will have our bilateral meetings with our interagency partners. We will continue to talk to our U.S. commercial sector, the most vibrant in the world. They are fantastic partners. We will continue to hear from them, what they need, what we can do to facilitate their engagement on the African continent, and we will make ourselves available to our African partners wherever they are in their space journey, to help them develop policies, regulations, etc. We'll remain the partner of choice. We will encourage them to model their rules, regs, policies on the U.S. model. It will ultimately make it so much easier as they ramp up their space ecosystem to work with the U.S. space industry if they have if they've followed the template that the U.S. has followed. So we will continue doing all of these things.
Jaisha, anything else you want to add?
Well, I'll put in another plug for our big USTTI training in Ghana in May. There's also another ITU meeting around the corner, the Plenipotentiary Conference, and that will cover a range of policy approaches for new and emerging communications technologies, including space. And that will be in the lead up to the World Radio Communications Conference, which I cannot emphasize the importance of that major event, with a huge focus on space and spectrum. I'll also put in a plug for ITA's foreign commercial service officers around the world, particularly in Africa, engaging constantly in our African hubs, and on our resource for all of you and your industry to work with as well.
I think I saw somewhere that something like 60% of the agenda items at the next work are space related, which again, this is the World Radio Communication Conference across all of the IT telecommunications, yet space is dominating, which is crazy. I think I'll close just by re-emphasizing how much of a change this is from several years ago, let alone 10 years ago. When the UN COPUS started talking about the long-term sustainability guidelines, that started as a discussion really among the space powers, the rich countries, Europe, Japan, America, Russia, China. And I remember talking to some of the countries from Africa and elsewhere who were saying, well, why should we care, right? We aren't users of space. That has totally changed, right? They use space, even if they didn't realize at the time, they're increasingly using space, and now they're going to be active in space, which is a huge change. So anyways, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Please join me in thanking the panelists.